All right, some guy messaged me. I don't know why I'm doing this, but we're doing this. Let me just play Minecraft while I talk.
Hello?
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Hey, sorry. Let me mute the stream real quick.
Yeah, sure
Okay,
thing.
can you hear me just fine?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. So, this is like more or less the first time I'm sort of watching it. Wait, I gotta pull up chat for this.
Oh no,
All
bad,
right.
big mistake. But go ahead.
No. I'm rolling with the punches here. All
Okay.
right. So, um, I just tuned into the stream a couple minutes ago, but I realized you were talking about Jordan Peterson. I was like, oh, okay. Seeing Destiny, talk about politics and his views and such. But first and foremost, you said, okay, well, there are things about Jordan Peterson that are inherently good that he does. For example, talking about responsibility and stuff like that. And then you get to the part where he's like, where you essentially say, oh, he denounces transgenders, that he thinks that if you call them by their pronouns, that they're giving into what they want, or not necessarily what they want, but rather you're feeding into a mentality that is propagating a victimizing mentality throughout society, or something along those lines.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I suppose the main part in which I disagree is that um, he when he was making those videos and when he was talking with Congress, the Canadian Congress at the time, he was talking about a specific legislation that would pass that would penalize people for not properly referring to a transgender by the way that they wanted to be referred to.
Sure. So I'm not
Um,
gonna try to catch you here because
mhm.
I don't try to debate people by like catching you. Like if I wanted to
Okay.
catch you, what I would ask you is what is that legislation that was passed, right? And then you would squirm
Okay.
and struggle because you don't know the answer. And the reason is because there was no legislation that was passed that penalizes people for not using somebody's pronouns. That's just not true.
Was it? I realized it was a particular. I think it was legislation, but I know he went and talked with several senators in Canada about about trying to pass it at the very least,
So like
or talking
there's
about the
something
possibility of
called
passing it.
Canada has like this bill C-16 that talks about how they like view like civil rights and whatnot. And all they
Okay.
did was this pre-existing like giant bill or whatever. They amended it and they added like 2 lines to it that also protects like gender expression. That's it. It didn't add like Jordan Peterson makes it sound like if you accidentally misgender someone, you're gonna get locked into jail. That's absolutely not true. That's never happened, and no case like that has ever been brought before a Canadian court because of C-16. It's just not true. It's just stoking these weird anti-LGBT fears for no reason.
Okay. Well, I actually wasn't particularly aware that no one has been penalized at all. No one has been sent to jail or for the language used prior to adding those particular lines to C16. I'm not aware of that at any.
Well, I'm
I'm
saying
just not
that
aware of any.
the idea that like I'm sure there have been people that have been punished for stuff related to C-16, but
Okay.
it usually has to do with like particularly targeted discrimination. So, for instance, say you go to your job and somebody says, "Get out of here!" Like I don't like you because you're gay or you're an F word or
Uh-huh.
whatever, right? Like these are the
Okay. Yeah.
types of things that, or let's say you're renting buildings to somebody. You're like, I don't want you in my building. I don't rent to gay people. I don't rent to trans people, right? Instead
Sure.
of nastier language, right? I'm pretty sure that this bill, similar to what was passed in New York City, is targeting those types of things. So people that own businesses, people that are like landlords, that they can't discriminate against certain classes of people. But this is something that we already
Sure.
support, though, like across the entire United States and across all of Canada already.
Sure. But wouldn't that already be covered under the broad language of LGBT that was already in C16 though? I thought
Not
the additions
necessarily.
were just language.
That's why they added gender expression because arguably, no, like trans-related issues weren't covered under that.
I thought it was specifically pertaining to language though.
No,
Okay.
this language thing and for
Okay.
compelling pronouns. This is not in any legislation anywhere. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to
Okay.
sound upset,
No,
that's
no, no,
just
no,
not true. It's a lie that Peterson passes to his fan base. It's not true. There is no piece of legislation that says like you must respect pronouns or there are 72 pronouns and if you don't call someone that, you're gonna get locked up by the Gestapo. Like it's just not true.
Okay. Sorry, I just had to clear that up.
Yeah, it's
That
fine.
part of but I think in general, like I suppose that you brought up that okay, well, um, later into the stream, you brought up this topic of was it Black Lives Matters in general? What is it? Wealth inequality, disparities between races, and so on and so forth. But as someone who is very, very, very moderately conservative, I don't see that to be the case necessarily. I think that people argue that there's equality of opportunity, but not necessarily equality of outcome. And
Wait, do you think there
are
is
you more or less
equality of opportunity in the United States right now?
okay?
Wait, no, I'm asking you. Do you think
I
there is?
oh, I think that to a certain extent, yes, but
Wait,
obviously
hold on.
nothing works
I'm not trying to
perfectly.
get you here, but this is kind of a yes or no question. If you say to a certain extent, then what you're really saying is no, there's not. There are cases where there aren't equality of opportunity.
See, I don't think it's. I think for this type of question, it's not necessarily absolute. I think that it works very. There's a lot of equality of opportunity, but is it perfect? No.
Okay. How old are you?
Roughly 19.
Okay, fine. All right. I didn't know if you were old enough to have kids or whatever. Okay.
Okay.
I am 29 and I have a 7-year-old son. I wanted my
Yes.
son to get the best education possible, so I moved to the wealthiest district in my state or in my city, so that my kid could go to the best school possible. Do you think that my
Okay.
kid is going to have the same opportunities available to him as a poor black kid that lives in North Omaha that goes to a shit school that can't even afford textbooks for their kids?
No, not necessarily at all. But the thing is, okay, so then how do you fix that problem? Do you just give those kids an opportunity to go to the same school that your son goes to? Like, how would you solve that particular problem, though?
So like I'm not
At that point,
accusing yeah. So I'm not accusing you of anything, okay? I just want you to know how this sounds, okay?
I know, I
So
know. I'm just asking you
well,
how
no.
would you fix
Well,
it? Okay,
I don't know if you understand how what
okay,
you just said sounds. So, okay,
okay,
so what I said is that my kid has done nothing to earn the school that he goes to. He didn't do
okay,
anything for that. And the kid that goes to
okay.
the poor school in North Omaha, he didn't do anything to deserve that. And when I suggest that there is a massive inequality there, and then you go, "Oh, so what? Is that the solution to send them to the same type of school?" Yeah. I don't think it's fair that my kid is going to have so many more opportunities available to him in life just by virtue of being born to a woman that I happened to come inside 8 years ago. I don't think that's a very fair system. And the fact that some kids are going to be fucked because they happen to belong to single families where the dad left, or because they happen to belong to poor families where those people didn't have opportunities. No, I don't think that that's. I don't think that's a good system. And to say that that's like equality of opportunity seems insane to me.
Okay, so then, okay, first and foremost, let's get this out of the way.
Sure.
Your life in high school does not dictate the rest of your career. It's
That is
typically what university
absolutely
does.
not true. Elementary school will start
Okay,
to determine your future.
okay.
Like,
No, okay, okay. Then my response to that question would be, how come there's always a kid that gets into like Harvard from Detroit, if that's to be the
are you
case?
familiar with what a normal distribution is? I'm not trying to get you here. If not, I can just explain real quick.
A normal distribution in terms of what?
So, like, if I draw a graph and I have
Okay,
a small loop on one side and then it gets big in the middle and there's a small loop
like
on
a
the
bell
other.
curve.
Yeah, sure, like a bell curve, right?
Okay,
And we can
okay.
speak about deviations from the norm, right? One standard deviation, two standard deviations from the norm, right? You're aware of this,
Okay,
right?
I get your argument. It's
Yeah.
essentially
Well,
that
what you're
two dimensions.
essentially telling me is, look, there's an outlier, so your whole curve is wrong. How?
Okay, okay. I see your point.
So you're telling me that, well, what about a kid from Detroit who goes to Harvard? Yeah, I'm sure that probably exists. Are you telling me that if you're born into Detroit though, you've got a higher chance of going to Harvard than a kid that's born into some wealthy oil town to a rich white
Sure, no,
family?
no, no. I completely agree with that point. But the thing is, okay, so now that we've identified the problem, me and you both can agree that it exists. How do you then go about solving it? Do you then create a more common core like system where you give everybody the same opportunity or something along
Okay,
those lines?
wait. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Real quick before we talk about this, what do you think Common
yes.
Core is?
Everybody has to essentially follow, or not follow, but meet a certain requirement before they graduate high school.
Okay, that's yeah, pretty okay, more or less sure. It doesn't prescribe a particular curriculum. It's just a set of standards that people like certain tests, like that people would like you to be able to pass or whatever. Certain things they'd like you to know coming out of high school. Sure. Okay, yeah, just making sure. So like in terms of what's the solution to the problem, I mean, I don't know. There could be a ton like the way that we fund school districts is probably not good. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but from what I understand, the way that we fund school districts is done via property taxes, and then those property taxes go to specific districts that those houses are a part of. So that means if you have
Uh-huh.
a very wealthy district, that means that those schools are going to get a lot of money and they're probably going to be better than schools in poorer districts. This is probably not a good way to do education because we're literally giving you an outcome of your life based on how wealthy your family is. When education is supposed to be the opposite. It's supposed to be the great equalizer.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. I agree with that, but this is a problem more that has to do with wealth rather than just equality of opportunity, rather than race per se. If this is
Well, but these things are all tied
okay,
together, though, right? Race
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
wealth,
I
and
agree that the majority, or at the very least, Black people or sorry, African Americans are more disproportionately born into poverty than say white Americans are. But that becomes okay. Never mind. Never mind. Never mind. I'm just trying to fucking wrap my head around how I
Hi,
would
Dad.
fix something based off what I say, because I just don't want to put blanket statements out there that you
sure,
can't.
no, I
That
mean
you
they're
can't.
hard problems to fix. I
Okay.
don't deny that. None of these have easy solutions, and I'm sure you can think of a lot of problems with a lot of my proposed solutions. Like one districting an entire city so that all the money is equally
Too
divided.
fair.
I mean, arguably throwing more money at education on its own doesn't fix it. There are other changes that are more comprehensive that have to happen on top of that. But before these changes can happen, we have to acknowledge that there's a problem. And to say that there's an equality of opportunity in the United States just because there are some outliers is just insanely not true. Like there are if we are Bayesians in the way that we approach life, we can very easily like make guesses about what a person is going to wind up as based on some initial prior conditions, right? If you tell me that your family is making X amount of money, that you live in some part of the country, that your family has some level of college education, right? If you give me enough of these, right, I can like be reasonably certain about how successful you're going to be in life. If this was an equality of opportunity country, that shouldn't be true. It shouldn't matter what your starting conditions are. Equality of opportunity would mean that anybody can go anywhere. But we know that's not true empirically.
Okay. But what if there's let's just say that theoretically there's full equality of opportunity, but then two people were starting at different points along those lines. Would it still necessarily end with equality of outcome? I'm actually not sure on the whole entire data behind or research behind this. So
No, I mean,
I
I'm
was
sure
just
there are some
asking.
biological differences. There are going to be some environmental differences that are impossible to account for. I don't think that equal outcome is going to be possible in every case. No, of course not.
Okay, so you would be okay with just giving everybody a complete, just the same opportunities, but you don't necessarily care about the outcomes so long as it's not like insane.
In a very simplistic way, sure, yeah.
Okay, because I don't know. I'm just thinking about the entire system and how it would work. But the thing is, the way that you framed your argument was like, okay, Republicans or conservatives in general don't support or don't even acknowledge the problem, which I just don't I just disagree with
Well,
because
but you did it. You did the conservative meme right at the start of this. The meme that I
okay,
always complain about, where people say, "Look at your normal distribution," and I go, "Yeah," and you go, "Well, look at 3 standard deviations from the norm," and I'm like, "Okay," like that exists, doesn't it? And I'm like, "Yeah," and you're like, "Ha! I just disproved your entire normal distribution."
no. That wasn't to completely disprove your point. That was to say that there is enough equality of opportunities so that even if a kid in the worst circumstances can still manage to get to a place of very, very good opportunity.
Okay,
That was my entire argument.
what do you think? Yeah, I understand it, but it's wrong.
Mhm.
What do you think equality of opportunity means?
That people have the
Okay, wait. Here,
that
actually,
everybody has
let's start this. Okay, I'm gonna say let's say that we have 5 quintiles of wealth. Okay, we've got the top
okay
20%.
yes
We've got the next 20%. We've got the next 20%. The next 20%. Right. What do you think equality of opportunity would mean if I were to ask you, what should the wealth of these people be later in life?
um okay, well, am
So
I
like,
given anything else other than
no. You
just
all
that
you know
there's
is
five
that
quintiles?
they're all spread evenly across 5 quintiles of wealth. All of them are spread equally across it.
Well, I'd assume that three people would do fine and then two people would do slightly worse than those three. That would be my guess.
Well, okay, hold on. So, like, what I would expect the answer to be is that no matter which one of these you're born into, you have an equal chance of winding up in any other wealth quintile. Does that make
That
sense?
assumes that all of the people are, not exactly the same, I should say.
Well, if I were to run this experiment a million times across a million
Okay.
people, I would expect
Okay.
every person to wind up like it would be random, right?
Okay.
That would mean that there's an equality of opportunity. It would mean that anybody in the bottom could reach the top, and anybody at the top could reach the bottom. There's an equality of
To
opportunity.
Martha.
Anybody could do anything, right?
Okay, I agree.
But that's not true. The reality is that if you're born at the very top, you're much more likely to stay there. And if you're born at the very bottom, you're much more likely to stay there. The fact that
But
some
that did,
people from the very bottom
okay.
make it to the very top doesn't disprove that reality.
Okay. I agree. Like I completely agree on the topic of wealth, but at that point, then if we are to then extrapolate this point onto race, then at that point you would just say, okay, well, we just need to make more African Americans in America more like rich, essentially. But then how would you do that within our current society without drastically changing the way our economy works?
Well, I mean, I think we do need to drastically change some things in our society, like, because it seems like the distribution of wealth is like super fucked right now in our country. No?
I would agree with that, actually.
Or like it seems like maybe our tax code might be a little bit fucked as well. Like that people at the top could probably do more to help people at the bottom. I guess like right now there exist some problems in society that to me are totally unacceptable. And it's part of what I talked about earlier. I don't think the fact that my son will have better opportunities in his life than some people will ever have just because his father is wealthy. And he didn't earn that at all. I don't think that's fair that some kids are fucked right off the get-go. I mean, some of them can make it, sure. But I mean, like people will survive gunshots too. I mean, it just doesn't prove anything. The idea that like some people can be fucked right out of the gate and have such a harder time accomplishing anything than other people, I just don't think that's very fair. I don't think that's a good world that we should like accept.
Okay, I obviously agree with these points, but then this is the data.
Okay,
That's
hold on,
taken
wait.
from the
I'm sorry, I
absolute.
have to hold you to this because I'm going to kill myself if I don't, okay?
Go
You
for it, go
say
for
that
it,
you
yeah.
agree to these points, but you still feel like we have an equality of opportunity in the United States,
Yeah,
which means you
I was,
can't.
I was
You
just about
can't.
to get to that.
Yeah, so you can't.
Okay.
So you don't agree with my points, and now you're going to explain why. Because if you agreed with my points, we wouldn't be talking about anything right now. We would just agree. You don't agree with my points. Right
I
now.
agree. I agree with your points just relative to America itself. But when you compare, okay, so obviously we talk about you bring up the anecdote about your son and how he has more opportunities. But let's just say, for example, a more third world country where some kids are either born as slaves or some people are born as incredibly, incredibly wealthy. So I think that with respect to the rest of the world, we have great equality of opportunity.
Okay, but that's not the standard by which I compare myself. I'm an American. I don't want to say, well, our poor kids are doing better than Cambodians or Ethiopians or Sudanese children. That's not my goal. I want them to be
I
doing
guess
well.
I guess philosophically we just disagree on this point then, because I think that the system works to a certain extent well enough to where if you try to drastically fix it, there may be unforeseen consequences with those actions.
So then
Does that
it's
make
acceptable. I mean, it's acceptable to you then that certain people in the United States are just never going to have certain opportunities available to them because of the wealth.
I think we both agree. I think we both agree that we would love to give everyone equal opportunity in the world without screwing anyone over, without any foreseen consequences. But I don't see a world where that works out.
Sure, and you can say
Mhm.
that. That's fine.
Okay.
But then you can't say that and then also say, well, we also have equal opportunity. Now you're changing your argument from earlier where you said we did have equal opportunity. Now you're saying we don't, but I don't think we ever can.
Oh, I look at it pragmatically, not necessarily like just on a philosophical basis. I agree that yes, there is not perfect equality of opportunity, which is what I initially said, but I'm saying that
Well, wait.
within
Well,
the
this is
system.
like the most Weasley
Okay,
phrase ever. Like, if I ask
sure,
you, do we have
okay.
equality of opportunity? Like, well, we don't have perfect equality of opportunity. Well, what does that mean? So then we don't have equality of opportunity. I don't understand what the point of that phrase
No,
is.
no, no, no. Okay, okay. I understand. I understand the point that you or the argument that you're trying to make.
Sure. I guess my argument is that we don't have equality of opportunity in the United States. If you're born in a wealthy family, the chances are you are going to be far better off than somebody not born into a wealthy family. I think that's pretty undeniably true. Do you disagree with that, or do you?
No, no, I agree with that point. Wait, how the fuck did we get from equality of oppor or how the fuck did we get from race to equality of opportunity? I guess they're pretty interconnected if you count disparity or income disparity between races. But
Well, sure. I mean, it's we were talking about. Well, it's because we started talking about equality of opportunity, right?
yes,
And I don't
okay,
believe that
never
equality
mind.
of opportunity exists in the United States. And then your initial
Okay,
response to that was, well, some people that are in bad situations do well. And then I said, well, exceptions don't disprove, or standard deviations don't disprove a normal distribution. Just because there are some outliers doesn't mean that there's not a general trend.
okay, okay. So, okay, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, never mind. I agree with most of your points outside of just philosophically disagreeing with what can and can't be done within the current system.
Sure, and you can have philosophical disagreements, but the argument, I think that inequalities will always exist and there's nothing we can do about them, is a lot different than saying I don't think any inequalities exist, so we shouldn't do anything about them. Right? Those are two fundamentally different points, right?
Okay, sure, but this is something that's completely different from what I was disagreeing with on your stream.
Oh well,
Just
wait. What were you disagreeing with on my stream initially?
that okay, Republicans don't acknowledge the problem at all.
Oh, well, I mean, you came on as a Republican and you didn't believe that you didn't believe that equality of opportunity was a real thing, or you said that it existed perfectly. So I thought that kind of was like speaking to my point.
I didn't. Okay, first and foremost, I never said it existed perfectly, and I'm not a Republican. Well, if you pointed a gun to my head, I'd vote Republican. But other than that,
Wait, do you support Trump?
no.
Um,
Or actually, if you point a gun to my head and I thought about it for 3 days, I'd say that I think about it.
okay, you're a
But
Republican then. Okay, it's okay to say that. It's not a dirty word.
no. I don't know. I guess it's just the connotation that's been brought up on the stream.
Well, because I
Because
hate Republicans.
that's just sort of the vibe that I get from the stream.
But okay. Wait. So what was the very initial point then that we disagreed on?
Jordan Peterson, which I mean, I guess that just comes down to the particular context of the legislation that he was talking about, which I guess I misconstrued.
Okay.
Actually, there's also another topic that I wanted to sort of discuss.
Sure, hit me up.
Fuck, I forgot it.
Is
Fuck.
it related to Jordan Peterson?
No, it was. Oh wait, it was police. It was police brutality and race.
Sure.
So, okay, I think we can both agree. Black people are, at least in America, are disproportionately searched, among other things. So I wanted to hear from your perspective what a solution to that would be.
Wait, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that last thing?
That people of color are generally and disproportionately profiled more than compared to any other race.
Sure, that seems to be true based on the reports of the studies that I've read. Yeah.
Yes. So based off those that data that we just now have, how would you fix it?
I don't know. I mean, the way that we police in certain places might be changed. So, for instance, policies like stop and frisk should probably never exist.
Okay.
Things like body cams, probably a really good idea. They hold everybody accountable. They protect good police officers, and they're bad to bad police officers. I don't. Those are two things I can think of off the top of my head. More accountability for officers that misconduct themselves relating to investigation. So if an officer does something bad, discharges a weapon when they're not supposed to, or does something, some other type of improper conduct, they're actually prosecuted realistically for it. I mean, I don't know. Those are some things I can think of.
Okay. I just wanted some things to think about before I fucking.
Sure, I mean, like this is like Black Lives Matter like complains about a lot of these things. So one of the big things that BLM complains about is the fact that when a police officer does conduct themselves in a very improper way, they're oftentimes not prosecuted in an appropriate way for it. They end up getting either no charges or very light charges, or just administrative leave sometimes. Like these are complaints of a lot of people that that march with BLM. Or the idea of like body cams being instated on all police officers. Some police officers will shut them off before doing shady shit, or some police officers are opposed to them for some reason.
Okay, I agree. I can agree with the body cams one. That was one that first came up to mind, or that came up to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on black on black violence though? I think that's a problem too.
Yeah, sure, of course.
All right. Okay. All right.
Well, I mean, it's a problem, but like, I mean, like sometimes people seem to think that they can use this to like hand wave like police on black violence. Like, I mean, like, yeah, they're all problems and they should all be addressed. But I don't think that just like, because a lot of times Republicans will do this meme where it's like, oh, well, if you really cared about black people, why don't you talk about black on black violence? Well, I mean, we can talk about that too. That's a problem. But like, BLM isn't marching about black on black violence. They're marching about white on black violence. I mean, black on black violence is another problem we can talk about as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure most people.
I get the entire idea that having a protest to a protest is kind of redundant in the first place.
Sometimes, yeah.
All right. I think we're in agreement with most things other than just subtle philosophical.
Okay.
All right. I got what I want out of the talk.
All right. Thanks a lot, buddy.
You have a good stream, buddy.
Bye.